compliance, build it there. And so this step of suing a municipality, we did not do lightly. We're enforcing the law as it exists. We're in court now asking them to agree that this is mandatory and that they must come into compliance. And if anything, I want to give a shout out and more airtime to all of those municipalities and those residents who are rolling up their sleeves and working with us to come into compliance based on the fact that this is mandatory. And I will just add 2 other points that I think are important. The law does give us an opportunity to push for the creation of more housing that is affordable for our public employees, for our elders who want to downsize, for so many folks who desperately need housing, including his 2 kids. And the second piece I think is important. Many of our housing laws have been exclusionary in nature in the past. They have excluded folks from being able to live in certain communities, including folks that look like me, through all types of legally sanctioned restrictions. This law, done by Governor Baker in the legislature, said we want to change that. So it offers an opportunity for us to actually be more inclusive in our development and in building our communities that I think is something that sometimes is lost too.
Are you talking to leaders in Milton about settling this thing, or?
We are in constant communication.
And
I
is there
think
a chance of that?
I hope so.
Do you not worry that if the SJC doesn't rule as you want it to, that this whole house comes tumbling down? Because you don't know whether communities are complying because they think it's a good idea or because it's the law and they're complying with the law. The whole thing could unravel should you lose this.
Based on our, obviously, briefings and communication with the court, I'm confident that they will come down on our side in the sense that we've made it clear through the advisory, this office has a credibility long before me of when it makes these advisories. It does it in a thoughtful way and one with integrity that looks at the law as it currently exists. And so I'm confident they'll come down on our side and make it clear that this law is mandatory and that municipalities have to come into compliance. And one step, Jim, if I could just stress, we've been reasonable every step of the way. It's not about an adversarial process or working against a municipality or elected leaders or even residents. We're not going after a ballot initiative or anything like that. It's simply to say we've gone into court. We've kept it real simple even there, not seeking a whole host of remedies, but simply to say the law is mandatory and towns must comply, and we'll continue to offer that technical assistance.
Okay, so one last question on this, which is the exact same question I asked you last month, and I can't remember your answers, so my apologies. You've said it's a mandatory law repeatedly, and I agree with you. If it's a mandatory law, why do the people of any community get to vote to decide whether? It's like saying it's mandatory that you don't break into someone's house, but we're going to let you vote to say whether you can break in it. If it's mandatory, it's mandatory. Why is there a vote?
So it depends, and it's not so black and white. There are pieces of this that could be viable or not, that could be legal or not, meaning the ballot initiative and what they choose to vote on. But we're also not an office that's in the business of overturning results of an election. I don't think, frankly, that...
But why is there an election? That's my underlying... Well, I don't get it. It's mandatory, it's mandatory.
And we're going to keep pushing that point. You can push that point while still affording folks the process to go through another legal process and to make a decision in another way. But in this case, we're not in the business of overturning election results. We're in the business of enforcing the law here. And this is, while it may be a tough issue for some to grapple with, it's crystal clear. And I will say the majority of communities in Massachusetts have come into compliance. I was recently with someone from Dedham who's on the planning board who frankly was like, can Dedham get some attention here? Because they continue to do the work to come into compliance. And I think these other municipalities that are doing that, as he said, it's not so hard. And so we want to continue to offer up that technical assistance while not vilifying anybody.
If you're talking to Milton, what are the odds quickly, do you think, of resolving this before the SJC argument in the fall?
I don't know about odds, but our goal is hopefully to resolve it, but we'll see.
Where do you want to go, Marjorie?
Let's go to Laura in Medford. Thank you for calling, Laura.
Welcome, Laura.
Hi, thanks for taking my call, and
Sure.
Thank you, Attorney General, for your good work.
Thank you,
I'm
Laura.
hoping you've heard of this and can shed some light on this. I received a letter from a company named Bradford Scott saying my data was breached, compromised on 7/2/23. I just got the letter like a month ago. It had a QR code to sign up for protection. I didn't trust that, so obviously I thought it was a phishing scam. Called the phone number on the letter. It was just a call center in quotes. Named IBX headquarters in Texas, and they had no manager for me to speak with. So I did some more research and found out that Bradford Scott is who has a parent company who provides software for credit unions. Smart Tech is their name. I finally got a phone number for Bradford Scott. It was hard to find, information about them. And I also called my credit union, and they don't use this software. So, I mean, a long time ago, I bought a car from a credit union. I don't remember who it was to check. So I called Bradford Scott, got somebody to call me back, and asked him to please, can he tell me from where my data was compromised? Because my credit union doesn't use his software.
Okay.
And
Laura,
I
what's the
haven't heard
question?
back since 4/3. Yeah, can she help? Has she heard of this?
So Laura,
I think you should hire Laura, by the way,
Yeah,
let me
Laura-
tell you.
Okay.
as I just met with our local consumer protection programs all across the state who do great work in this regard. Laura, I think because yours is so specific, I'd love for you to stay on so that we can see the letter. We deal with data breaches all the time. There's a requirement that you report it to our office, and so their data privacy team and others who are holding folks accountable on what they need to share with consumers and how to solve for these issues so that you're not defrauded in the future. But Lauren and Kira from my team are here, so if you stay on and provide details to them, we can follow up with you specifically on this case, look at the letter, and go from there.
Laura, stay on hold. One of our producers will get your contact info, and we'll share it with somebody here on the Attorney
Lauren
General's
and
staff.
Kira.
Lauren and Kira. My apologies.
General-
I didn't mean to be disrespectful.
No, you know I love
forgot-
shouting out every
I know
team
you do,
member
and
that
I
does this
admire
work
that. I
with
love
me.
that, actually. Thanks.
Whenever we have the subject of the zoning laws in Milton, all around the Commonwealth, or not all around the Commonwealth, people that are attached to the MBTA, people bring up the sewer issue. This is from Allison in Halifax. This is just one of several. How will towns without sewer systems handle the high-density housing requirements of the MBTA communities law? She says 50 units per acre. I don't know if that's right, but 50 units per acre in a town like Halifax, not possible without septic systems, and they don't have a septic system. So what about those towns?
Allison, I appreciate you reaching out. I agree with one thing Mark said, is it cannot be a one-size-fits-all for every municipality. While they may have this T as a public good in their community, and this is why the legislature and Governor Baker looked at those communities in particular as they have a public good, what should their responsibility be in terms of this housing and affordability crisis? But one thing I want to make clear is the housing agency, Secretary Augustus, have been really great in working with us as well on making sure that there is flexibility. So in the regulations themselves, they went through various iterations to make sure that there was flexibility for municipalities on where they could put this housing, given some of the concerns that Allison just mentioned. Resources for technical assistance to actually bring in folks to help them plan. And Milton got 2 of those grants so that you bring in a professional to help your planners, to help your municipal leadership, working even with our municipal law unit, to come together in developing a plan that works best for your community. And we don't want to stand in the way of that. We want to support that every step of the way. We don't want this to be an additional burden. So we understand you got to be reasonable, you got to be flexible. But we also have to make it clear that at least my lane is making sure that folks come into compliance with the law that exists. And if folks want to change that, then they have to, of course, talk to their state legislature and elected officials on that. But our job is to offer that technical assistance, be reasonable and flexible, and then, of course, do everything we can to support municipalities in bringing this housing online.
Before we get back to the calls, Attorney General, you mentioned Governor Baker a couple times. You did a thing with him. Was this about the youth gambling on sports
Yes, we
thing?
did.
Okay, so could you briefly, I have a couple of questions about that. Could you briefly describe this initiative and what your concerns are?
So it's the Youth Sports Betting Coalition. It includes all the major teams in Massachusetts. Governor Baker, we announced it during the NCAA tournament. I was going to say conference
Whatever
tournament.
it was.
Along with the Gaming Commission and other allies in this work. And we all said we have real concerns, not about gambling and sports betting. It's legal and we're not opposed to that. But real concerns about young people who are either currently engaged in betting when they legally are prohibited from doing that, particularly this 18 to 21 range. You cannot place a sports bet. The prevalence of whether it's ads and other things that are being fed to this population. And of course, the real risk, if you choose, even if you choose legally to participate in sports betting around addiction, substance use disorder, mental health concerns, going into debt. For our office, we're going to focus on the well-being of our kids and economics. So we decided to lead this effort with all of them. One, to develop and work on developing a curriculum, starting in middle school, around the pros and cons of engaging in this behavior, about what your rights are and aren't. So if you choose to engage in this, you are protected in different ways because you have some basic knowledge, which I think a lot of young people still don't. The second is also bringing together this group of folks to say what else we can do. We, through our office, have, of course, been involved with the development of regulations and ads and making sure those ads, for example, in social media cannot be targeted to young people through technology changes, app changes by the operators. And then lastly, we want to pull in the operators. They started a similar initiative, investing millions of dollars to address these same concerns. We also want to go to them and say, well, okay, how are you going to work with us? And the sports teams, I think, play a unique role here, hence why every single one is at the table, because they have the players, the platforms, to reach young people in ways that I think are just quite different from an attorney general and from an elected position or governmental agency, with the hopes that they too can carry this message. So we have a meeting coming up at the end of this month, and real work will come out of it. And I read today that people wish that this existed before. Well, I wasn't in office then, so I came
So
in
it's
late.
Maura Healey's fault.
So no, it's not.
Oh, I thought that's what you
So
were saying. I'm sorry.
I inherited, it had already passed, the development of the regulations with the Gaming Commission. And I want to applaud my team in the sense that we rolled up our sleeves really quickly to put forth regulations that would protect young people, reduce the number of ads they see, et cetera. But there's still more work to do, and we take that on. And we're here for the challenge, and this coalition can help us do it.
I have two questions. You mentioned ads a couple of times.
Yes.
One of the people who is critical, I think critical of what you did, saying you didn't go enough, I think I agree with, which is no matter what kind of education work you do, when your favorite athlete is on TV in your face when you're sitting at home and you're 18 saying, come to my betting thing, with all due respect to you, I'm going where that Celtic or that Patriot. Why aren't you proposing to ban or are you? Why aren't you proposing to ban these ads?
We said you got to be careful when you get into this content question, what you can say or not say. First Amendment implications come in quickly.
Cigarette ads.
But even when we proposed some of these ideas to the Gaming Commission initially, there was a lot of pushback. And so we have been pushing every step of the way, including pushing operators, for example, most young people get their information through social media, so that those ads are not coming to them based on their ages, et cetera. So there's ways in which you can design these features and things to limit the proliferation of these ads. But I want to just add why we wanted to make the sports teams a part of this coalition was for that very reason, including operators, to say there's only so much we can do in our office, but if we want to see the number of ads go down, and to make sure that they are not so prevalent, there's a role for them to play. There's a role for operators to play, us working with them in the Gaming Commission. So hence this coalition is, I think, important. And I think I misspoke earlier. I said Youth Sports Betting Coalition. It's Youth Sports Betting Safety Coalition. So I want to be clear on that.
One last question is, we had this discussion, I think, last year, both with you and the governor. There's a bill in the legislature to allow the lottery to be online. And at least the original iteration even allowed 18 to 21-year-olds to participate in this. I hate it. Maura Healey said to stay competitive, we need to do it. You say, I think I'm paraphrasing, with safeguards, et cetera, this is the way to go. How can you argue that online gambling on sports is a real problem for those late teens, and being able to bet on the lottery online if you're 18 to 21 is not an equally great risk?
That's not my argument.
Well, you're okay with online lottery.
That's not my argument.
What is your argument?
I have said this is up for the legislature to decide. I haven't really taken actually a position.
I'm sorry.
What I'm more concerned about, and I think it's similar to the sports betting context, if you bring in this new betting, this new gambling opportunity, you have to be really concerned about the risk. We're focused on the risk and doing everything we can to deal with those risks, and I hope as people think about, of course, ways to bring in greater revenue, there's also the risk. We said the same thing in our artificial intelligence advisory just released yesterday. Inherent, I think, ways in which to promote innovation in Massachusetts, but at the same time, real concerns about the risk in the context of young people. So I think this coalition that we just got off the ground, it won't be surface level. There's a real opportunity as we get more data, which we welcome, we need more, on who's participating, who's engaging in gambling, and what the effect that is having, there's a real opportunity for us to do something about that.
So I don't want to misrepresent you again. What is your position on having the lottery online?
I don't have a position. I just want it to be safe and responsible, and I want folks to be thinking about those risks. And I also want folks to think about, you pass a law, we also have to develop regulations. You need time to do that. And I will just quickly say this in the context of sports betting, the time frame to develop those regulations was short. And you cannot have a short time frame when you have to be thoughtful on those risks and ways in which we can respond.
That's Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General of the Commonwealth. She's going to be with us to the top of the hour, taking our questions at yours at 877-301-8970. Quick break. We'll be right back.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, for Emmy-winning actor Gordon Clapp, the road often traveled is the one where he inhabits poet Robert Frost. He joins us to talk about reprising the role in an upcoming production of the one-man show. And it's been more than 40 years since writer and cartoonist Alison Bechdel created the Bechdel test, the litmus test for gender representation in Hollywood. She joins us for that and more. That's on The Culture Show, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Mass Cultural Council, an independent state agency committed to supporting the vibrant creative and cultural sector of Massachusetts. Learn more at massculturalcouncil.org. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion, with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marjorie. And we're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, is kind enough to join us for an hour every month to answer your questions and ours. And she's with us until the end of the show.
And good to see you
And
again.
we have Rob at the Boston Public Library microphone. He's got some questions, I think.
Hey,
Is
Rob.
Rob there about
Rob
doctors?
is
He's
back.
there.
Yes.
Hey,
Thank
Rob.
you.
There he
Good
is.
to see you again.
Thank you. I had, about a year and a half ago, I had cataract surgery on one of my eyes. And the doctor that did the surgery, he said, apparently they take, my understanding of it, they take your natural lens out of your eye and they put another one in to replace it so you don't have the circles at night. And he told me that if I wanted to be able to see out of my eye when he got done with the surgery, it was going to cost me an additional,
Oh, my
I think it was like $500. I don't remember exactly what the price was, but he said it was going to be an additional charge. And I got talking to the other people that worked in the office, and I said, so the lens that they put in your eye, is there an additional cost for a stronger prescription, or how does that work? And they said, no, it's the same cost for all the lenses. Doesn't matter what the prescription is, it's the same cost. Like, how can you justify charging an additional $500 to be able to see? Is that legal?
Love the question,
I love the question,
Rob.
Brad.
That is great.
Yours is
Rob.
Rob.
Yeah, it's okay.
I wrote that down wrong. So,
okay.
Rob, can you stay
Yep.
and want to get more details here, and we'll follow up on this. Obviously, Lauren and Kira are right here, but stay, and we'll follow up on that.
So just so I understand, Rob, if you don't
Yeah.
want to see, you can save $500. If you do want to see, you got to pay the extra $5. Is that right?
The vision that I have in my right eye was so bad, I couldn't see. I could just see colors. And he's like, well, I can change that out, and so you don't see the circles around things, but I still couldn't see. And he's like, well,
And we don't want to laugh on something that's so serious,
No.
obviously, but
Sorry about
it
that.
is. I think it is funny.
He's laughing
Yeah,
too.
he
It's
is.
okay.
Yeah.
Rob, do you see these
I
people? They
think-
all work for the Attorney General.
Yeah.
Walk over there,
We're-
talk to them, and get your thing resolved, okay?
right,
I'm
thank
a
you.
little
Nice to
thank
meet
you. Good to see you, Rob.
Yeah.
suspicious. I think so.
It's great that he can
Speaking-
laugh,
We're all
by the way.
suspicious.
Talk
Yeah,
about
we're
a
all
grown-up.
suspicious. So I wanted to ask you about Steward Healthcare. As you know, Senator Markey and Senator Warren just had these hearings at Beacon Hill, and I think Senator Markey decided we could put an empty chair there because the guy that runs the place, Ralph DeLatorre, did not show up. There's a lot of concern about what's happening with the hospital service because there's so many of these hospitals in Massachusetts. So where are you at this particular juncture involving Steward?
We are busy, and I don't want to mince my words here. This is a public health crisis, and you can follow it in the news, but if you're a patient at one of their facilities, or if you work at one of those facilities, you have stress right now, and rightfully so. And we're doing what we can. There are some things within our purview, and then there are some things that are not. The first is, of course, ensuring this access to care and that providers are getting paid. On the providers getting paid piece, we play a role in that, and we continue to work on that issue to make sure folks are getting paid. We do that work through our Fair Labor Division. We also are working with the administration on just this access to care piece as they do their analysis on these institutions and possibly who might take them over, who might not, et cetera. And they're having some regional meetings just this week to engage stakeholders. We're a part of those conversations, but we have no direct authority to really assist or help there. Where we do have authority is in these two other buckets, which are sort of these parallel conversations we're running in the office. The second is using every tool in the office to hold Steward accountable. That requires us to get more information, more details. That's going to take a little bit longer, and we tell the public, be patient, but we're going to use every tool to hold them accountable. And the third is looking at how we got here and that we don't get here again. And that for-profit role in healthcare, absolutely a question that's on the table and has been for the office for a little bit. But that will require possibly some legislative changes to give us more authority over for-profit versus non-profit, where we have significant authority in these types of healthcare transactions, to bring about greater transparency, greater accountability. And we're working with the Health Policy Commission. I have appointees to that commission. They have a role here too. But what does it mean? And that is a more long-term conversation that we're also intimately a part of. And to Senator Markey and Warren's point, it I think dovetails with what they've been saying too. And this is not just in the context of Steward, for profit. Our Medicaid fraud division does a lot of work with long-term care facilities, elder homes, and this we're seeing in that context too. And they have a lot of thoughts and ideas on how to improve the tools we have to hold folks accountable when the care is not high quality or there are major mistakes in terms of all types of shortages that are affecting the quality of care at those facilities.
Can I say, I'm sorry,
I'm
Ruth,
just
you go
going to
ahead.
say, wait, is this a
No,
Steward question?
on Steward, yeah.
Yeah, well, you go ahead, because I have something
I
else.
have a couple of questions. Obviously, it's not illegal, even though it is grotesquely irresponsible for this dilatory to thumb his nose at Senators Markey and Warren and all the people they represent by not showing up to speak to them when they convene this hearing. But we spoke to Governor Healy about this very same thing, and you. It's clear there's some holes in the regulatory authority that Steward has crawled through so that they don't have to do the level of reporting that would allow people like you to know in advance.
That's right.
This is a troubled system. This is the same tired question. Again, I'm sorry. It's so obvious to me what the legislature needs to do. Are they working on filling these holes so that this level of reporting that does alert officials like you and the governor becomes automatic?
I think the legislature is working hard. On
do?
the one
Okay,
hand, you have folks who are representing these constituencies where these hospitals are. They too are carrying
that's a
this
good point.
stress.
Yeah.
They're getting the
Yeah.
complaints even when they're walking around their grocery store and community. They're getting those complaints, and they don't have a direct role in expanding access. They have to work with DPH, Health and Human Services. So they're pushing the administration, right, to develop this plan and contingency plans, et cetera. And at the same time, the legislature is working hard with us at the table too on what is a long-term fix. And that is Senator Friedman on the Senate side with the Senate President, and then the Speaker with Rep. Lawn on that side. They jointly through the Health Care Committee that they lead have been at the forefront of this in the beginning and want to develop those solutions with us so we don't get back here, and push for that transparency and give us the tools we need in the AG's office as well as the Health Policy Commission, which also needs greater tools here too. And I will say, in Massachusetts, we are unique. I had AGs from other states come here in Boston, and we hosted a conference, and we talked a lot about our healthcare framework. They don't have an HPC. They don't have some of the tools that we have. So while we have some great tools, I think it's just it's a reminder to us to always be mindful of, we can't rest on our laurels. How do we continue to expand tools in these contexts to always do better and to make sure we're delivering quality service to our residents? And where there is a breakdown, that we have the tools to hold folks accountable.
We're talking to Andrea Campbell. She's the Attorney General of the Commonwealth. She's here for another 20 minutes.
Yeah, just one thing, as long as you mentioned Attorney General long-term care facilities before, and there's this place up on Mission Hill, which has been put in a receivership. You've been looking into this, the allegations of mismanagement, non-compliance, and it's a nonprofit place. 71 people live there. What I guess would surprise me, the guy that runs the place, his salary was $628,000. I guess it's back down now to $333,000. But since you hear about
This is
one-
Edgar Benjamin
this
Nursing
is
Home, right?
Edgar
Yep.
Benjamin Healthcare Center. It's in Mission Hill, and
right.
it's about 71 people live there, and this is their home. You hear about this one. We heard about some in Western Mass with these kind of shutdowns, which have got to be. I can't imagine if you're a very elderly person and this is your home, and all of a sudden you're going to be separated from the friends and everything else, or your family. How do these places get regulated? I mean, who looks out for this?
There are
These
various
agencies.
stakeholders involved. First, anytime you close a nursing home or facility in any community, it is devastating, it is traumatic, it is hard, because those folks that are receiving those services have to then go somewhere
Yeah.
else. And last I checked, and we established our Elder Justice Unit to take on some of these issues. It is really hard and not easy to navigate these various systems to even get someone placed to get these services. So it is difficult and challenging. In this particular context, I want to applaud, frankly, the community, Senator Miranda, and so many folks on the ground that stepped up really quickly to mobilize and say there are real concerns about this closure, in addition to the closure, but other things too. And our office mobilized, working with the Department of Public Health, one, to make sure the providers were getting paid, and actually to date, we've gotten, I think, close to $200,000 to those providers to make sure they're getting paid. Again, that's in our purview. We also represented DPH in this process, and through that state agency representation, we're able to leverage our tools and to say, okay, what's going on here? And ultimately went to court to say a receivership here is warranted, it's important, and the court agreed. So we're able to come together, I think, with community to be able to do that. And then lastly, and we don't want to stand in the way of that. We want to be a part of the solution. And then lastly, there are still concerns around financial mismanagement that we're actively looking at. That is an open matter, of course. So we're not closing the door on this. The receivership piece was in the immediate solution, but there's more concerns here that we need to address.
We're talking to Andrea Campbell, and now Sam in Needham is talking to Andrea Campbell. Hello, Sam. Welcome. Sam? Sam.
Are you looking for Dan?
Oh,
Exactly.
Dan, sorry.
You're looking for Dan
Dan from
Sam's
Needham.
brother. Hi, Dan. How are you? I'm sorry. My apologies. Hello, Dan. Welcome.
No worries.
I'm really sorry.
Thank you. Hi, Attorney General.
Hi, Dan.
I have two questions. I'll try to make it brief. The first one I had already written to your office, but got a response that your office doesn't help individual consumer complaints, although this was actually a complaint for everyone in Massachusetts. It's regarding the right to repair law, which I voted for, and now I've been impacted by it because of Kia and Subaru's decisions to completely disable telematics in the state, which I think in general is annoying and childish, but as an EV driver, the cars are pretty much useless without working telematics. And when I was in the process of purchasing my new Kia EV, no one ever mentioned, disclaimed anything about the fact that the telematics don't work, which renders the car pretty much useless.
So, Dan, what's the first question, if I may, please?
Well, I think we should follow up with Dan, because
Dan, you left?
Yep, no, I'm here.
Oh, what's your first question for the Attorney General? What is it?
I just wanted to know what the status is. I'm sure there's some pending litigation with Kia and Subaru, but I just wanted to know if there's kind of any hope for consumers who want to have Kias and Subaru vehicles that function.
Dan, while the Attorney
Wow.
General is answering your question, I think you wanted him to get on hold and get his. Yeah, Dan,
Yes.
you go on hold too. We'll get your contact info for her office, but Attorney General, take it away.
So, Dan, first of all, thank you for supporting Right to Repair. We did too, and of course went back and forth on the implementation and enforcement. It is the law of the land. It is currently being enforced. And like you said, there are some automakers who are choosing to turn off their telematics. sort of maybe a runaround here. So we're actively working on that, including with our federal counterparts. I would like you to stay on, though, because while we may not be able to help residents and those who file complaints on specific things, that's not always the case. I just left a meeting with our local consumer protection LCPs, we call them, from all across Massachusetts. We fund these mediation programs. They are on the ground helping consumers on an individual basis every day. And we fund that work, so that's not entirely true, but it depends on the matter. But given what you're talking about, I'd love the team to get your contact to follow up, particularly on these automakers and what we're contemplating in next steps. A lot more to come here, but we're working as hard as we can. It is unfortunate.
Dan, don't go away. An
morning,
unrelated question. A couple of weeks ago, we had on our show a woman who actually was an intern of mine ages ago, Susan Zalkind, who has dedicated her whole journalistic adult life to researching and reporting on the triple murders that happened in Waltham in 2011, a year and a half before the murders at the marathon finish line here. And she has pretty conclusively, in my estimation, made the case that one of the murderers in Waltham was the elder Tsarnaev, and obviously by definition, if he had been investigated and found guilty, there would not have been a marathon bombing. She's been in touch with the Middlesex County DA, Marion Ryan's office. She was not in office at the time of either. Ryan says it's an open case 13 years after the fact. Do you have any communication with DA Ryan about this? And if not, do you think it's appropriate for the Attorney General to get involved in some fashion in this open and, I would argue, pretty critical case for Massachusetts?
So no conversation with the DA specifically about this case. We talk to DAs, every single one, frequently, because sometimes we have joint matters together. But a lot of times they run their own wheelhouse, right? In many ways, they are not only elected officials, but they have the purview, particularly on criminal matters. And that's why we have an AG office. We could take every case, but why we have district attorneys. They are more proximate to the case, more proximate to law enforcement, more proximate to community. So the understanding is that they, of course, are best positioned to deal with those cases. So I don't have details on this, and if DA Ryan says it's an open matter, it's probably one they're continuing to look into. I know they work hard, especially if they inherited it. I don't know all the details, but I encourage her to stay in contact with that office.
The only thing I would say, and then we'll move on, is, and the reason I might make a case that the Attorney General has a role here, my understanding is the state cops who were in the apartment in Orlando when the alleged colleague of Tsarnaev, Tadeshev, who was allegedly involved in this murder in Waltham, state police who report to the Attorney General's office were present when Tadeshev was killed. And so I guess the question is, does that rise to a level where you would consider it to be appropriate to at least communicate with the DA's office?
Not necessarily. So I have a state police unit within my office that I oversee. And they, of course, are connected to the larger state police, but they still are separate and apart. All of state police does not report to me.
I understand that. I understand
That would be quite actually overwhelming, I think, in terms of the job. But EOPS and the administration have that purview along with the colonel. That being said, there are moments, of course, we take cases from the DAs. If there's a conflict, if there is sometimes them reaching out to us to ask us to take the case because of limited resources, a conflict, or something else. So there's active conversation all the time about when we should get involved and when we shouldn't. But I want to be crystal clear to folks, they're duly elected, right, to have a role and responsibility. And so you don't sort of take cases lightly, but if there's a conflict and other things where it warrants our involvement, we will get involved.
Thank you. We're talking to Attorney General Andrea Campbell.
Shirley in Jamaica Plain, you are on with the Attorney General. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Shirley.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm actually calling to check. I received about, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 months ago, a call, and they claim to be from your office about home tap. So I'm not sure.
Home tap.
Home tap.
What's
so
that?
Home tap is a relatively new service. It's like they're investors in real estate with the common person. And where banks may not give you a refinance on your mortgage, they may be willing to co-invest in your home and provide you money.
So you want to know if this is
And
real or
I
a
just-
scam? Is that
And also,
the bottom
did they
line,
leave a
Shirley?
contact of who and what? Yeah, you need to stay on.
Is this,
Shirley, you need
Worried me.
Shirley, you need to stay on.
Did you make this call? I don't mean you personally. You're off. I didn't think you personally had made the call.
I doubt that. You know, sometimes we will reach out if we have an open investigation into something. Sometimes our office will reach out.
Shirley, don't go away.
Through our investigators or victim witness advocates, whoever it is that is navigating that case, to also get folks to understand we're investigating something, and maybe because they're named somewhere, they filed a complaint. But Shirley, would love for you just to stay on. We can confirm whether that was someone from our office or not relatively quickly. And thank you for calling in.
Let's confirm you're not going home at night and calling people about home tap. Is that it? Can we agree? You're not doing that.
No,
Okay,
I'm
okay,
not.
fine.
But the people,
I'm going to kiss my husband, and kiss my kids, and spend time with them, put them to bed, and then
And
turn
not-
it back on.
Yeah.
But I will not be
Okay.
calling any constituents in Massachusetts
but
about
you know,
home tap.
these scams are getting more and more sophisticated, though. I told you
They
this
are.
story about having a call from my
yes.
bank's phone number, because I have I belong to a credit union. I've been with them for years, and I have it in my phone, so I can call them if I need to get a loan or whatever. Whatever it's for, and they called me from their number, but it was a fraud. It was a scam. It was people trying to, and I thought, how did they get the phone number of the credit union? But they had it.
So this segues greatly into two things. One is we just put out yesterday our artificial intelligence advisory, which is important, and co-hosted an event with UMass Boston and some of their professors there who work on these issues, to make it clear to the public but also the community as we interact with artificial intelligence and these algorithmic decision-making tools almost every day, that they are, of course, maybe a good thing and bring some benefits in terms of innovation to the state,
Yep.
but also there's real concerns about the risk, including deep fakes or this ability to pretend through voice cloning or other tools that they are representing an entity or public official using real voices, real credentials, real, I put that in quotes, but in terms of the likeness,
Yeah.
to then defraud folks. That is real, that is happening. And so we put out this advisory to make it crystal clear that that type of behavior and the bias we may see in this space, the lack of transparency, the data privacy concerns, all of that is enforceable by our office under our consumer protection laws, under our civil rights laws, under our data privacy laws, and so many other regulations. Because that wasn't clear before. So if it's a human being defrauding you or a system, both are equally seen the same under our laws in Massachusetts. That actually, believe it or not, is breathtaking because no state across the country has made it crystal clear and in line with our federal government that that's the case. So if this is happening to you and you feel like you've been scammed or defrauded by either a person or a system of some sort, do reach out to our office. Do let us know. We want to be able to go after some of these folks to hold them accountable. And then lastly, I will say on the data privacy piece, how people get your information, et cetera. We're at the State House now advocating for the Location Shield Act. You assume that all the data of where
Yeah.
you go to get your health care, your reproductive care, where your children go to school, all that is private. It is not. Right now, you can take that information, sell it to a third-party broker, and they can do whatever they want with it, including showing up at, say, maybe some reproductive health care institutions here in Massachusetts and doing all types of things. White supremacists, neo-Nazis using this information. It's not like there's a filter. So we're there at the State House saying, we need to change that. And this piece of legislation we're pushing for is to allow for those changes so that not anyone can just get your data.
So if you were Jane Doe and you were going to, say, Planned Parenthood for an appointment, they, through your phone data, might know that you were
That's right.
Jane Doe there, and they could harass you.
That the data question is a real one. At least in the AI context yesterday, what data are they taking from you? You know, how are they using that data? How are they storing it? Someone talked earlier about a breach in data. How are they, those are important questions for all of you to ask, to look at your various apps and things. But at the end of the day, this ability to take that information, to sell it to somebody else who then uses it for some purpose that is illicit, that's where we're trying to get a legislative fix here to not allow for that.
Can we talk about young people again for a minute?
can
We talk about it
always
in the
talk about
context
young
of
people.
gambling. A young person, obviously you're the chief law enforcement officer, you believe in the justice system at its best. A young kid is watching television or on social media and sees a former president of the United States trashing a judge, threatening witnesses, calling them sleazebags, trashing a prosecutor, and basically sending a message. You don't need to have any respect for the judicial system. You can say or do whatever the hell you want. How worried are you about the impact of that? Not in the individual case right now, but down the line in terms of how people view and whether they trust the criminal justice system or the court system in general.
We should all be concerned. This idea of the rule of law not mattering or meaning anything, or our democratic institutions suddenly not mattering or meaning anything, they are the foundation of a civil society in which we live. Yes, we have the authority through various tools, voting, showing up and lobbying, whatever it is, to change that system so it serves everyone equitably and fairly. And in the context of this presidential election, particularly Trump, this idea that he is above the law or immune, you don't have to go to law school to say, no, you're not. You are afforded certain privileges, but just because you have money and live in a certain skin and gender, that you should be afforded no accountability. And obviously we're watching what's happening in New York. I'm not in the weeds on that particular case, but we're watching it all. And we're reminding folks, and frankly making it less about him, but reminding folks what's at stake in this presidential election, the importance of voting. And I will just remind voters in Massachusetts, you actually are supposed to vote every year. There's an election here every year, just saying, really important. Every year in Massachusetts you should be voting, but this year is important. We're trying to protect our young people. We're trying to protect our civil rights, access to reproductive health care, a right to an abortion. We're trying to protect your economics, get rid of hidden fees, junk fees, address housing affordability, protect the rule of law, democratic institutions. The only partner in that work right now, and the best partner going forward based on the choice we have, and no one is perfect, is President Biden and Vice President Harris. In this election, you can't sit it out. Again, you don't agree on everything. I don't agree on everything. Mark called earlier. Mark, we're not going to agree on everything. But some things we might agree on. But this decision point here is so critical and so important. If we do not have a partner in that White House at the federal level, it makes it difficult for us to deliver the services you expect, to protect your environment, your children, to protect your bottom line, to protect your future generations. It's that critical. And I think as young people see this person on display acting out every step of the way, trying to use that to garner media attention, frankly, to continue to focus on him, I hope folks see through that and really begin to look at what matters to their families and make the right choice in November.
Thank you, Attorney General. Before you go, I don't want to take advantage of our access to you, but after you put the kids
I
to
love
sleep,
that your security who's standing by
What's
the
that?
door also clapped.
Oh, you did? That's great. Can I call you tonight at home and talk about home tap? Are you free? Maybe at about 11
I
or
can't
10:30?
wait. I cannot wait to get the readout on Shirley's call with the team to say, Shirley, who from the office called and what information, because
Yeah.
I doubt that, but we'll see.
Home
Attorney
Tap.
General,
It's a clever name.
we really, really appreciate your
Thank
time
you
as
for
always.
having
Thank
me.
you
Yes,
so
thank
much
you
for your
very
time.
much for
Thank
being
you all
here.
for having me.
We have been speaking with the Attorney General of the Commonwealth and